This is the Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's Family.
Final 2.9 seconds. Inbounded to Des Cambridge. Launches from backcourt. He made it! He made it! He made it! Des Cambridge knocks down a three from backcourt, and the Sun Devils have won it!
All right, you know that voice well. You know a big call when you hear it. Now let's bring in the voice of the Arizona State Sun Devils, Tim Healey, fresh off a buzzer beater over the weekend. Zooming in here to the Extra Point on Arizona's Family, former face of the sports department here at Arizona's Family, and always kind enough to join us. And Tim, have you recovered from Saturday down in the old Pueblo?
Yeah, I'm still sucking on some throat lozenges, Mark, to get the voice back. I tell you what, it was quite a way to return for me because some of your listeners may know, some may not, that I had missed the previous 2 weeks of ASU basketball games, 4 broadcasts in all, because I came down with COVID-19. But luckily was able to get through that, was cleared by my doctor to return to work midweek last week, and went and got interviews last Thursday leading up to the game, and then drove on down to Tucson with Kyle Dodd, Sean Crespin, our engineer, and Doug Tamaro, Arizona State's senior associate athletic director. We made a good old guys road trip out of it, and it turned out to be one of the best afternoons of our lives after witnessing a game for the ages. And I've told people since then, Mark, to me, one of the best things about the shot, the game, the circumstance, and everything was that it was an incredible capper to what I thought was an incredible basketball game. In fact, Kyle and I commented on the air late in the game when ASU was still trailing Arizona and things did not look good. We both commented that this was as good an ASU U of A basketball game in Tucson that I've broadcast in my 25 years as the voice of the Sun Devils. Even a better game, I thought, than some of the few Arizona State wins that I've announced down at McKale Center. It was just a well-contested back-and-forth game, 2 teams that really wanted it. And, the Sun Devils kind of hung with the Cats all afternoon, and then they fall behind by 10 with 6.5 to play, and it's not looking good. But this Arizona State team on several occasions this year has, found ways to lock down opponents down the stretch of games. And I go back to the Legends Classic in Brooklyn back in November when ASU beat Virginia Commonwealth in the semifinals in a game they trailed by 11 with 9 minutes to go. And then they hold VCU without a basket the final 9 minutes. Well, in Tucson Saturday, ASU held Arizona, which is, by the way, one of the top 10, not only a top 10 ranked team, but one of the top 10 offensive teams, top 10 in the nation in team field goal percentage, top 10 in the nation in scoring, averaging something like 83 points per game. Arizona State held the Wildcats to just 1 field goal over the final 6.5 minutes of the game. And that field goal was a Pella Larson driving layup with about 30 seconds left that gave the Cats a 1-point lead. But the Devils locked in defensively and found a way. And the way they found was a way that's going to live on in the hearts and minds of Sun Devil fans, I think, forever. One of the most compelling single moments in the history of Arizona State men's basketball. And such a thrill to have been a part of it and to be able to describe it.
No, certainly, and I was at my son's basketball practice, and I was listening, and I think it went. I was almost my reaction kind of sounded like yours, and I stopped practice and turned on the TV copy, and made all the kids watch it. So for you, when you're preparing for a call like that, obviously you don't know what's coming between that and the Jail Mary. When you see a football or a basketball kind of hanging in the balance, how do you prepare for a call like that?
Well, I think the thing is you don't prepare for a call particularly. It just is something that happens in the moment, if you will. Actors like to say, I was in the moment. And, to be in the moment of a game, you're not really thinking in those instances, how am I going to describe a possible game-winning shot? Because if you go back to that for a minute, in fact, I want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Vince Marotta from Arizona Sports 98.7 FM and a longtime friend. Vinny tweeted video where he was able to link our audio on the radio to the CBS video, but instead of just focusing on the game-winning shot, he took it back to 2.9 seconds left with Umar Ballo of Arizona at the free throw line. The Wildcats leading by 1, and Ballo has 2 free throws, and he missed the first. And Kyle and I mused on the air about the possibility, well, should Ballo really miss the second shot? Because even with a missed free throw and a 1-point lead, it's highly problematical that Arizona State would have been able to rebound a missed shot and get the ball up court close enough to attempt a reasonable shot at a game-winning 3-point goal. And I think that was part of the strategy of the last few seconds, and I'm sure it's a strategy that a lot of Arizona fans are second-guessing their coach, Tommy Lloyd, for not executing in terms of maybe having Ballo miss that second free throw. And then, it unfolded and the play happened and history was made. But you're not really thinking in those terms. Like we're trying to be in the moment and describe this is the situation. This guy has 2 free throws and he missed the first. Ordinarily the strategy would be make the first, maybe miss the second. He missed the first. So Kyle and I were discussing, should he possibly, miss the second one because of the reasons I just laid out. And then I think on the broadcast, I said, we'll see what happens as Ballo gets set to shoot the second free throw, 2.9 seconds left. Then he puts it up, got it. And then from then the ball was quickly inbounded by Jemiah Neal to Des Cambridge. And there's more strategy that maybe could be second guessed. The Cats made no attempt to pressure the inbounds. And Des Cambridge got a clean catch. And I thought it was brilliantly done by him because he caught the ball in a place where he could kind of run and dribble into the rhythm of a shot that he felt comfortable with taking and comfortable perhaps with making. And lo and behold, he did. Now, if you'll recall, Mark, this is not the first time this year that Des Cambridge has hit shots like that. This is actually his third, because if you go back to December 1st, he hit a game-winning 3 at Colorado with about 3 seconds left on the clock. The Buffs had a chance and did get a last-second shot off by their guard KJ Simpson after a timeout, but the shot missed, and Arizona State won that game by 1 point. And then on January 19th, ironically, against the UCLA team that ASU will play this coming Thursday night, Des Cambridge hit a shot from about the same spot that he did at McKale Center at the end of the first half of that game against the Bruins. And that gave the Sun Devils a 35-30 lead at the half in front of a capacity crowd at Desert Financial. Tremendous ball game, but that's the game where the Bruins kind of wore the Sun Devils down and beat them by 12, 74-62. But Cambridge has been there, done that in terms of those kinds of shots. And when he let it go, our angle was, we're sitting next to the Arizona State bench courtside, so the ball is kind of coming our way and going past us. So we didn't have the best angle to see, but that thing was just, it looked like it was on line, and then it was so pure. It was nothing but net. Didn't hit the rim, didn't hit the backboard, didn't hit the back iron. It just swished through the cords, and an epic moment had been authored by Mr. Cambridge, and the joy of the entire Sun Devil team, and you could almost feel the joy of the entire Arizona State fan base and Sun Devil Nation, that energy kind of wafting through the airwaves, I guess. But it was an incredible moment. And I know for me personally, and I think for a lot of Sun Devil fans, what made it such a joyful moment is it came against a team and in a place where ASU has year after year after year taken it on the chin from the Arizona Wildcats. If you go back to when Lute Olson was hired to be the head coach at Arizona, ironically, he moved to Arizona the same year I did, 1983. And from when Lute took over the U of A program to this day, even with the Sun Devils win on Saturday, Arizona is 63-19 against Arizona State in men's basketball since 1983-84. So, and I have been behind the microphone for a good number of those beatings, and a lot of them were beatdowns. I mean, there were a lot of years in the 90s when Olson's team were in their heyday where we'd get to the first media timeout and it would be like 16-2. And it just seemed to happen year after year after year. And to finally come through with a win like that against that team and that program and in that building in front of those fans, it certainly had to have an extra measure of delight for Arizona State fans for sure. But, the honest truth is it was a tremendous basketball game. Both teams played their hearts out. It really was. It was competitive. It was well played. Got a little bit chippy in the second half, but nothing, bad or anything like that. And it was just a fun game to watch and be a part of. And then to have it end like that is just like the cherry on the top of the sundae.
Well, and I tweeted afterwards, and there's no answer here, but Twitter is just sort of a bunch of people throwing stuff out and seeing what sticks. But I said, is that the shot that got Arizona State into the NCAA tournament? Now they have to go on the road this week, take care of business, have a good showing in Los Angeles and in the Pac-12 tournament. But in your opinion, what does that do for their chances, and what's the roadmap look like to seeing the Sun Devils playing live on CBS 5, Arizona's family in the NCAA tournament this year?
Wouldn't that be nice? I would say that I'm kind of the middle ground there. I don't think that's the shot that gets them in. I think it magnificently enhances their resume because it is a top-notch quad one victory, which I think now gives the Sun Devils 4 quad one wins this season. And a thing to keep an eye on, this is a little bit off topic, but remember the Sun Devils' 25-point beatdown of Michigan in the championship game of the Legends Classic in Brooklyn? Michigan's gone on to have a little bit of an up-and-down disappointing season, but they've played better of late. They had a win over the weekend, Sunday, in fact, against Wisconsin. And they're getting to the point right now where it's close to where Arizona State's win over the Wolverines in that championship game could move conceivably within the next week from a quad 2 to a quad 1 win, which would give ASU 5 quad 1 victories. And they're going to have a chance to get 2 more this weekend. The bad news is they're playing 2 really good teams, UCLA and USC, on the road. The good news, those are 2 quad 1 opportunities. And man, oh man, if you somehow get one or both of those, you're looking at potentially 6 or maybe even 7 quad 1 wins. And this is a team that is 10-4 away from home this year. Think about that for a minute. 10-4 away from home, and they are 6-2 in Pac-12 road games this year. The only 2 road games they've lost in the conference was the weekend they got swept up in Washington. They have road wins at Colorado, Oregon, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, and now Arizona. And that's remarkable in many ways. And they reached 20 wins with that victory at Arizona. And they are right now a game ahead of Oregon for 4th place in the Pac-12. And the top 4 teams in the conference will get a first-round bye in the tournament next week. And I know there's been a lot of angst in Sun Devil Nation after the 15-3 start. The team had a 4-game losing streak and has been very inconsistent offensively since then. And there's been a lot of frustration at times. But really, Mark, when I look at it in a lot of ways, this to me is one of Bobby Hurley's better coaching jobs because he has a team that I don't know if they're going to have an all Pac-12 player on their team. I think Des Cambridge has a chance to get some first-team all Pac-12 votes. And if he has 2 strong games this weekend, he just today was named the Pac-12 Player of the Week, which, by the way, is the 3rd time this year he has won that award, and that's more than any player in the conference this season. He has a chance, but other than that, I don't know that they may have some honorable mentions on their team, but I don't know if they have any first-teamers. And yet with the team, that he's had to put together on the fly, 4 of the 5 starters are first-year transfer portal entries for Arizona State. He's got this kind of season going where they might make the NCAA tournament. But to get back to your question, I think the Arizona win enhanced the resume, but I don't think it gets them in. They've got work to do. I think They really, really could use a split this weekend against the LA schools. And I would even submit to you that of the two, the one that I would hope they could get would be the UCLA game Thursday. Because if they beat UCLA, if I'm not mistaken, I think a win against UCLA will clinch the number 4 seed in the Pac-12 tournament for Arizona State, because that would be the tiebreaker the Sun Devils would have in an eventual 4th place tie with Oregon. Oregon's got an easier schedule this weekend. They host Stanford and Cal, so those are 2 likely wins for the Ducks. But if the Devils can get a split this weekend, preferably, at least get a win at UCLA, and maybe win a game, possibly 2 in the Pac-12 tournament. I think if they somehow get to 22 wins, I think they're in. I think they have a good chance to be in. I think they would deserve to be in at that point, because when I look at the net rankings, I see some strange things there. There's an Ohio State team that's 12-17 and has a net ranking comparable to Arizona State's in the 60s. And I absolutely do not get that. And there are some teams above ASU that don't have records as good, either overall or in their conference. And teams that have not done as well on the road or away from home as Arizona State. The net rankings, I think they're trying to, come up with a metric that can effectively determine the strengths of all these teams in men's college basketball. But I think that the net ranking, I think it needs some work. I think there are other measurables that need to be incorporated or modified, because I don't think that is the be-all, end-all, and say-all, in my opinion.
As you saw the 4-game losing streak, though, what were some of the commonalities there that need to be fixed with this team to make sure they're playing their best basketball the next 2 weeks?
Well, I would go to the most simplistic rationale in basket. The general idea in basketball is to put the ball in the basket, or as Keith Olbermann used to say in hockey, put the biscuit in the basket. That's the commonality. If this team can make shots, they feel like, and I'm inclined to agree with them, that they can beat anybody in the country. And when you look at their 3 best games this year, that the beatdown of Michigan in the title game of the Legends Classic. And I'll tell you what, going in, we were there, and it was really early in the season, Mark, but when we were, that was an interesting tournament, because in Brooklyn, the 4 teams were Michigan, Virginia Commonwealth, Pittsburgh, and Arizona State. And Michigan looked by far and away the best team of the 4 in there. Virginia Commonwealth has been a consistent 20-win program the last few years. Pittsburgh has struggled in recent years, and yet if you pick up the paper today and check out the top 25, who's number 25 in the AP poll? The Pittsburgh Panthers. They've had a heck of a season that I didn't think they were going to have when I saw them in Brooklyn. And then there's Arizona State, the team that ended up winning that tournament. But you go back to that, and that game against Michigan, their 90-73 win at Oregon in January, and Saturday's game in Tucson, easily the 3 best games the Sun Devils have played. What's the common denominator? They hit better than 50% of their shots. They defend so well and have been able to rely on their defense a lot in crunch situations when they've had to rally for wins this year, that if they can hit a reasonable number of their shots, they're going to be tough to beat. I mean, here's a terrific stat, and I think it's a current one. Arizona State this year is 16-2 when they shoot at least 40% for a game. And 40%, as you know, is average to mediocre field goal shooting, which tells you that if they're going to shoot in the low 50s, as they did in Tucson, they shot 54% against Arizona and shot well over 50% in those other 2 wins I cited against Michigan and Oregon. With the way they guard, they're going to be a tough out. And it just gets down to shot making. That was the common denominator. The offense, this team's offense has not been good very frequently in the last month and a half. There have been a lot of moments in games and a lot of games where they just have not looked very fluid offensively. And it just, all gets around to the ability to make shots. And if they can shoot the ball, if DJ Horn and Des Cambridge in particular, those are 2 guys you keep an eye on. If they're able to make shots from the perimeter, it just makes everything else open up. And of course, there's the stat we love to cite about Devin Cambridge, that Devin has scored 10 or more points in 13 games this year. And the Sun Devils' record in those games, 13-0.
Interesting.
And he fouled out with 9 points on Saturday in Tucson. So we're thinking, oh no, not today. But we were wrong. But yeah, I would say shot making, that's what it comes down to with this team. If they can play decent offensive basketball and make their shots and shoot a respectable, the only 2 games this year they've lost shooting at least 40% were that loss to UCLA at home. And then when they got beat by Oregon at home, that was a really disappointing loss because that's a game I think the Devils felt like they could have and should have won, but lost 75-70. Those are the only 2 games this year when they've shot at least 40% and lost the game.
Do you have a favorite reaction? It sounded like Kyle Dodd was pushed in like a bucket of cold water or jumped in a cold swimming pool. Jeff Van Rauphorst in the Jail Mary, we always joked that he sounded like the booth was being attacked by bears. So which one, if you had to pick a favorite reaction, who wins and why?
Oh, I'd have to say it'd be a tie. I don't want to alienate either of my 2 close buddies, but Kyle, we laugh a lot. I mean, he's, both guys are passionate about their respective teams. And, the interesting side story on Rapper is that, you have to remember one of Rapper's brothers used to be the quarterback of the USC Trojans. Mike Van Raaphorst was USC's quarterback in the late 1990s. And so I think that rivalry means something to Jeff. So when he saw that Jail Mary, that partly explained his ecstasy. And Kyle Dodd, I think, was something like 1-8 in his career against Arizona as a player. And yet, interestingly, has made several lists that have been compiled by U of A fans for the 5 or 10 most hated opposing players to ever come to McKale Center. In fact,
he probably loves that. That's got to be his most favorite stat of all time.
Oh, yeah. I think that's going to be on his tombstone. But when 1 year I think we had just arrived in Spokane for a trip to Washington State, and we're waiting at the baggage claim area at the Spokane airport. And Kyle found out about this article that came out that listed the top 5 McKale enemies, or whatever they tagged it, most hated opposing players. And the list included 4, I forget all 4, but I know that 2 of them were Reggie Miller and Shaquille O'Neal. So you're talking about 4 of the all-time greats in college basketball. And the 5th was Kyle Dodd, because Kyle got into a fight with Luke Walton in a game in 2002 in Tucson. And ever since then, he has just been public enemy number 1. But he has embraced it, in a very good-natured way with a lot of class. And he has some very free-spirited and fun interplay, I think, on Twitter and other social media outlets with Arizona fans about that. But he loves it when the Devils can beat the Cats, as all Sun Devil fans do. And so his joy was genuine, and as a former player that still loves the program, and it's just kind of fun to hear him react. And I think for most fans who listen to the radio, listen to the hometown broadcast on the radio of any sport, of any team, I think that's the kind of reaction that really that they yearn for. That's what you want. It's pure emotion, and that's why I think radio still has a big place in sports broadcasting in this country, and always will, hopefully. The television announcers, the games are televised mostly by networks, and those guys, that their job is to be impartial. They don't have a dog in the hunt. They just want a good game. But our job, is to, as the home team announcer, is to, broadcast the game to the best of our ability. And as I learned in journalism school, the 3 big letters, ACI, accuracy, clarity, and interest. You want to make it clear, you want to make it interesting, but first and foremost, you have to be accurate. And you tell the game like it is. And when a Wildcat player makes a great play, that's a great play. And you don't sugarcoat it if your team is not doing well. But in those moments when your team has an outcome like this, it's remarkable. And it's that kind of emotion that I think fans gravitate to when they listen to the hometown broadcast on the radio.
Well, it was a joy to hear. Great to see you back to work. We're glad you're feeling better. And here's to another call like that down the road. I'm still looking. There's an old headshot of yours somewhere here in the building that I'm going to find, and we're going to have to frame behind you.
I've got one. Maybe I'll have to send it to you, but I found one from one of our Channel 3 telecasts, and I think it was my doing the lead in to one of our football telecasts in Tucson against the Wildcats back in the 90s. And that's when I had really good hair that wasn't gray and didn't have to wear glasses. And I'll have to send that to you. I think I've got it somewhere.
All right. We'll look for that on social media. So, hey, thank you so much for your time and continued good health. And, can't wait to see you out on the road there. And hopefully we'll see you on the sidelines calling a game when the game's on CBS 5.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.